What is going on, YouTube, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing my second round mock draft, picking up where I left off in yesterday's video. And without further ado, let's begin. So, to start the second round with the 32nd pick of the draft, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Myles Murphy, edge rusher out of Clemson. Myles Murphy, a good pass rusher at Clemson, and I think the Steelers, they lost. I think they just want to add to their front seven. They lost Devin Bush, and they obviously haven't had Bud Dupree. They tried to get him back, they couldn't. So I think, and they want to add another edge rusher to have a partner in crime with T.J. Watt, and just to have more depth at the position because they ran into some trouble with that last year. With the 33rd pick of the draft, I have the Houston Texans selecting Will McDonald, edge rusher out of Iowa State. The Texans, their biggest need after quarterback and receiver is definitely defensive line, and Will McDonald would be a solid pick for an early second round. With the 34th pick of the draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals, who, by the way, unveiled their new uniforms. Pretty cool. I have them picking Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the edge rusher out of Kansas State. Cardinals, they lost J.J. Watt. They need another pass rusher. They struggled with some pass rush this past year, and Uzomah is a solid edge rusher for Kansas State. With the 35th pick of the draft, I have the Indianapolis Colts selecting Broderick Jones. Broderick Jones, a great left tackle for the Bulldogs. The Colts lost Derek Fisher, or he didn't play last year. They need a left tackle. Their offensive line definitely struggled last season. Broderick Jones, the big left tackle out of Georgia, would be a good pick. With the 36th pick of the draft, there's a lot of different directions the Rams could go here, but I have them taking Antoine Harris, tackle out of Oklahoma. They need some offensive line help as well, and Antoine Harris would be the best left tackle still available. With the 37th pick of the draft, I have the Seattle Seahawks selecting Tyrique Stevenson, cornerback out of the University of Miami. The Tyrique Stevenson, a lot similar to Tariq Woolen, maybe not to the same extent, but they need a starting corner on the other side of Tariq Woolen. Tyrique Stevenson would be a good pick. With the 38th pick of the draft, I have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting wide receiver Jordan Addison from the USC Trojans. When I watched a lot of those USC games this year, Caleb Williams' favorite target was Jordan Addison. He was reliable, he made great catches, and the Raiders need a pure number 2 receiver next to Davante Adams. Jordan Addison isn't the biggest receiver, but he's a great route runner, great in the slot, can make guys miss after the catch. Really like Jordan Addison out of USC. With the 39th pick of the draft, I have the Carolina Panthers selecting defensive tackle Mazi Smith from the Michigan Wolverines. They need defensive line help, and I think Mazi Smith would be a great value pick at this point in the draft, a guy that easily could have gone in the first round. With the 40th pick of the draft, I have the New Orleans Saints selecting Steve Avila, guard out of TCU. The Saints need some guard help, offensive line help. Overall, I think they're not going to draft the tackle early on because they have Trevor Penning. They want him to work out. I see them taking Steve Avila from the TCU Horned Frogs at 40. With the 41st pick of the draft, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Zay Flowers, wide receiver out of Boston College. Very similar to Jordan Addison, a below 6-foot receiver, but solid route runner, some decent speed, and can make guys miss after the catch. With the 42nd pick of the draft, I have the New York Jets selecting DeJuan Jones from the Buckeyes, tackle. The Jets need some offensive line on the left tackle. They have a good interior. At right tackle, they got Mekhi Becton at left tackle. They got Elijah Vera Tucker. They have a solid offensive line on the left side, but they could use some help on the right side of their O-line. With the 43rd pick of the draft, I have the New York Jets selecting Antonio Johnson, safety out of Texas A&M. This might be a little bit early for Antonio Johnson. A lot of people believe he will be more like of an early third round, but I think he's a solid, a very good player, and I think he might be the second best safety in this draft. It's not the strongest safety draft class, but this guy is still, when I've seen him play, flies all over the field, and I think it's a position of need for the Jets. With the 44th pick of the draft, I have the Atlanta Falcons selecting Josh Downs, wide receiver, out of North Carolina from the Tar Heels. Josh Downs, another one similar to Jordan Addison, a below 6 foot receiver, or 6 foot or so there on the dot, pushing 6 foot, but more of a solid route runner and slot receiver. With the 45th pick of the draft, I have the Green Bay Packers selecting Jordan Battle, safety out of Alabama. The Packers need some safety help, and Jordan Battle would be the best available, the hard-hitting safety from the Crimson Tide. With the 46th pick of the draft, I have the New England Patriots selecting B.J. Ojulari, yes, brother of the other Ojulari in the NFL, edge rusher out of LSU. Patriots could use some more pass rush, more depth, and B.J. Ojulari would be a good pick. With the 47th pick of the draft, I have the Washington Commanders selecting Max Duggan, quarterback out of TCU. Now, you may be like, what? A lot of people see Max Duggan going more like late third round, mid fourth round, but I don't get why his draft capital stock is not as high as it is. This is a guy who was a Heisman finalist, made it to the Final Five, and led his team to the national championship. And that TCU team was not a offense in which it was Max Duggan being a game manager. They won a lot of their tight games off of Max Duggan slinging that rock. Max Duggan has proven he can be a guy who airs that ball out, and who, you can depend on him if you have to. I just don't get why he is not as, sought after heading into this draft. I have the Commanders taking him because I don't think the Commanders want to draft a high profile quarterback, even though Max Duggan is high profile within the world of college football. But I think, with Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, they bring in Max Duggan, and they may have, a interesting quarterback competition. With the 48th pick of the draft, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Luke Musgrave, tight end out of Oregon State. They traded TJ Hawkinson in the middle of the year. It didn't really make sense what they did there. They need a tight end. They didn't really address it in free agency, and Luke Musgrave and many other drafts would be the best tight end in the draft. But in this one, since there's so many good ones, he's falling to pick 48, which is still high. With the 49th pick of the draft, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Daiyan Henley, linebacker out of Washington State. Again, the Steelers lost Devin Bush. They need a middle linebacker to be their field general, and Henley can be that for them. With the 50th pick of the draft, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Luke Weipler, center out of Ohio State. Now you may be like, hold on, the Bucks have Ryan Jensen at center, but Ryan Jensen is 31 years old, and he's coming off of a serious knee injury in which he missed the entire 2022 season. And I think the Buccaneers may be starting to look at a contingency plan, and maybe even Luke Weipler could eventually start over Ryan Jensen this year if Ryan Jensen does not look the same. With the 51st pick of the draft, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Itami Ibare. This would be a great pick for the Dolphins, in my opinion. They need some defensive line help. Obviously, they brought in Bradley Chubb through this past year. They brought in, they still have Emmanuel Ogbah. They still have Christian Wilkins, sorry. And they have a solid line, but I think they want to add another guy on the outside, on the opposite end of Bradley Chubb. They didn't bring back Melvin Ingram. I think this would be a great pick out of Northwestern. With the 52nd pick of the draft, I have the Seattle Seahawks selecting Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver from the Tennessee Longhorns. The Seahawks, they got DK Metcalf, obviously. Tyler Lockett's still there. They lost Marquise Goodwin, who was kind of their wide receiver 3 this past year. I think Jalen Hyatt can be their wide receiver 3 and even become their wide receiver 2 behind DK Metcalf long term. A good outside receiver to get the ball to. With the 53rd pick of the draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Tuli Pulutu, edge rusher out of USC. Bears, another team that needs edge rusher help. They lost Robert Quinn in the middle of the year last year. Tuli was a great edge rusher for USC. Anchor of that pass rush would be a good pick here for the Bears. With the 54th pick of the draft, I have the Los Angeles Chargers selecting DJ Charner, cornerback from the Michigan Wolverines. Obviously, they have Asante Samuel Jr., who's one of the best slot corners in the NFL right now, but they need another outside corner. And J.C. Jackson had the injury last year, didn't play that well when he played. I think DJ Charner can be a great CB1 for them on the outside out of Michigan, a guy who was really good there for the Wolverines. With the 55th pick of the draft, I have the Detroit Lions selecting Julius Brents, cornerback out of Kansas State. Now, yes, I know I had the Lions also selecting Devon Witherspoon, but this is a team that desperately needs some cornerback help, and I think they could get their 2 starting corners within the first 2 rounds of this draft. With the 56th pick of the draft, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Joe Tippmann, center out of Wisconsin. They need a center, a long-term center, and Joe Tippmann would be a good developmental piece for them. With the 57th pick of the draft, I have the New York Giants selecting linebacker Drew Sanders out of Arkansas. They need a middle linebacker. They have Kayvon Thibodeaux, who's an outside linebacker. I had them drafting another outside linebacker earlier in this draft. I think Drew Sanders would be a good, middle linebacker for this team in coverage, a good field general for them. With the 58th pick of the draft, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting Trenton Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson. The main reason for this is, Micah Parsons has completely transitioned to being an edge rusher, doesn't play middle linebacker what he was in college at all pretty much anymore, and Leighton Vander Esch has been very injury prone throughout his career, and he's getting older. I think Leighton Vander Esch would still be the main linebacker, but I can see Trenton Simpson being the starting linebacker next to him in those nickel and dollar formations when the Cowboys run them, and ultimately be his predecessor. With the 59th pick of the draft, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Siaki Ika, defensive tackle out of Baylor. The Bills need to get more physical up front on offense and defense, and this would be a big body defensive lineman for them to get there in the middle of their defensive line. With the 60th pick of the draft, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Kelee Ringo, cornerback from the Georgia Bulldogs. The Bengals, I think, could use another corner. Eli Apple sucks, as we all know. I don't mean to bash him like that, but, when he talks that much, trash and then gets burned, you got to call it out. Mike Hilton is a solid slot corner, but even him, he's not really a guy that I think they are trusting as much anymore. I think Kelee Ringo would be a good outside corner for the Cincinnati Bengals. And then with the 61st pick of the draft, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Garrett Williams, cornerback out of Syracuse. Bears need some cornerback help. Garrett Williams would be a solid pick at this point. The Bears definitely need some cornerback help. They need a lot of help in a lot of positions, cornerback one of them. With the 62nd pick of the draft, I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Cody Mauch, tackle out of North Dakota State. Now, I get that this may not make sense because the Eagles are all set on tackles, but I could see them moving Cody Mauch into the inside of the offensive line, or he even could eventually start at left tackle after Lane Johnson hangs it up, because Lane Johnson is pretty old. But I just see Cody Mauch being a great fit with the Philadelphia Eagles. This mean, physical-looking, offensive lineman who's ready to go out there and pancake defensive players, and that just kind of fits the identity of the Eagles, and I think it would just be a great fit. With the 63rd pick of the draft, I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Nick Herbig, edge rusher out of Wisconsin. Obviously, the Chiefs let Frank Clark go. They let Carlos Dunlap go. And the only guy they brought in is Charles Omenihu, who was kind of like a rotational pass rusher for the 49ers. I think they need a full-time starter opposite of George Karlaftis, and I think they could have it in Nick Herbig, a good edge rusher from Wisconsin. And without further ado, that's the end of the second round. I'm just mocking the first 2 rounds. the two big, the two first rounds, the two big significant rounds. Comment down below what you guys think, though. I hope you guys enjoyed. And other than that, I'll see you guys next time.